This episode, I am super excited. We have with us Andrew. Andrew is a 20 plus year business owner, entrepreneur. He's sold over 6 businesses, and his expertise is labor, market, economy. And I just have to say, I'm really impressed with him. So in this episode, we talk quite a bit about the labor market and its impact on the economy, what he's seeing as shifts in the marketplace, how we have started this culture of everyone gets a trophy, which I think erodes hard work and work ethic. Everyone doesn't get a trophy. You lost. But really at the core of what we're talking about in this episode has to do with the things that he's seeing in the labor market. AI is maybe not as helpful when it comes to applicant tracking, what he thinks we should be doing as far as raising our children to have soft skills. The fact that so many colleges and universities have actually 200 plus, they did an article in the Wall Street Journal, have actually gone out of business, and whether or not every kid needs to have a college degree, which I'm not so sure they do. I want to know what you do. And if you don't want to share it, you can say, I make a range between $20,000 and $50,000, how you feel about your job, what you're doing. And if you felt like you have a college degree and it helped you, or if you've done something completely different, what's bringing you passion? What gets you excited every morning when you get up to go into the workplace? Be sure to subscribe and have a blessed day. We're so excited to have you. And this is one of my best yet.
Well, I'm very grateful to be here. It is fun to talk to professionals and people who are trying to figure out what in the world is going on with the labor market. And so a little background on me, Andrew Crapuchettes. I'm the CEO and founder of RedBalloon.work. Before Red Balloon, I was the CEO of a company called Lightcast, which does labor market data analytics. And so I have been kind of mucking around in labor market data for 20 years. I've also been blessed to start a lot of different businesses and sell a lot of businesses. So I think I have 6 successful exits over the years. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I now live in beautiful Idaho with my wife and 5 kids and 3 large dogs. And we lived on 60 acres, 10 minutes from the office, which is hard to accomplish in California. And in Idaho, it is beautiful. So there you go. There's the quick rundown on Andrew Crapuchettes.
Oh, well, awesome. So I know we don't have a lot of time, but I definitely want to hear from you. Like, what are you seeing in the labor market, and how have we gotten to this point? Because I don't think a lot of people kind of know where it started. If you could go back 20 years to what you've seen.
Yeah. So the labor market's changed fairly dramatically over the last 20 years. We have seen a couple of shifts, not just in the workplace. So in the workplace, it used to be, I would say that everything was more based on merit and far less based on political correctness. That has been a huge shift. If you look at the Gallup polls on kind of worker engagement, we have seen a dramatic decline in engagement by workers. So a Gallup poll just last year said that 67% of workers are either disengaged or actively disengaged at work, meaning they literally don't enjoy what they're doing. They don't see meaning. They don't get fulfillment in the work that they're doing. If you look at that same kind of statistic, even just 10 years earlier, those numbers were significantly lower. They were down in the low 30s% of people that were actively disengaged at work. So you've seen this significant shift where people are going to work if they can find a job, but they don't love it. They're just doing it because they have to pay their bills, they have to pay their taxes, they have to hold life and limb together. They don't see work as a calling, as a vocation, as bringing meaning to themselves or to the people around you. And the stats are very clear if you look at people like veterans who, if they have a meaningful job, the percentage of veterans who have meaningful work where they enjoy the work, who also are tempted to commit suicide is dramatic. A job is one of the most effective tools to help deal with PTSD and suicidal thoughts in veterans. So work really is a meaningful thing that we've kind of lost in our society today. The other thing that's kind of interesting is if you look at total job postings, and again, I'm giving a quick history of labor market data.
Absolutely.
If you look at total job postings by employers, we have about 8.1 million open jobs in America today. And that means that we have about 1.4 open jobs for every unemployed person. So there's more jobs right now than there were in the past. That number kind of peaked at almost 12 million during the kind of COVID era and the COVID rebound, kind of 2021, early 2022, where employers had laid off a lot of people and all of a sudden they were trying to hire them back. So that number was really high. But if you look before COVID, and even look 10 years ago, there usually were about 3 to 4 million open jobs in America. So what's changed over the last 10 years? So 10 years ago, 3 to 4 million open jobs. Today, about 8 million open jobs. Well, what is going on there? Well, employers are actually desperate to fill positions. They are feeling kind of the labor market drought. We have fewer workers who actually want to show up and work, and employers are kind of desperate to fill those roles. Now, if you're a job seeker right now, you're not feeling that. But if you're an employer, you are feeling that. There are an estimated 3.5 million working age men who are not engaged in the labor market at all right now, which is kind of a weird phenomenon that we've never had in the history of the world. And when I say working age men, these are people who are kind of 25 to 35. So this is like the prime age where you should be building your career, your connections, your family, building that wealth that you're going to be able to buy a house with, and that's the foundation for generations to come. Those people, 3.5 million, are not even on the unemployment rolls, let alone have a job right now. And that's because they don't want to work. That, back to that kind of Gallup poll about the disengaged worker, like we have this kind of shift. People don't see work as a meaningful, good thing that they should be doing. And so that's probably the biggest trend we have in the labor market. And then I can dig into, if you're unemployed, why you're not getting a job right now and what that feels like. But there you go. There's a couple of big shifts that I'm seeing right now.
So question for you. So I personally believe that a lot of this has come from every kid gets a trophy.
That's right.
And what that did was it eroded hard work. It eroded work ethic, where you were 14 and 15. I had my first job at 14 and a half when I was able to get a work permit. And I don't see, like now, kids aren't even working. And I'm like, why are you looking for jobs at the Chick-fil-A? Why are you looking at, that should have been a job that every teenager already knew they were going to have for the summer. So I think it started with everyone gets a trophy. No, you don't get a trophy. You came in number 3.
Yeah.
You're not getting a trophy in number 3. As far as I'm concerned, there should be no silver. There should just be gold and bronze, right?
Yep.
But when you look at what we've started, we've created these children, and is it parenting?
So it is parenting. And actually, here's a stat for you, and I'll try not to bury people in stats. But if you look at the labor force participation rate, that's the for age demographic, and I'll just pick on 16 to 19 year olds, right? Okay. 16 to 19 is where you're learning to look someone in the eye, shake their hands. Usually Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, that's your first job, right? 16 to 19 year olds. Labor force participation is, of all of those millions of people, how many of them have a job? If you go back to 2000, so 25 years ago, you had over 50% of those people had a job. And many of the other ones were working, they were mowing lawns or working as a farmhand. And that doesn't even count. So 51% were actually showing up and working at a fast food restaurant, or showing up and working in retail, or whatever it was, right? So they actually had a job. You fast forward to today, that's less than 30% of those 16 to 19 year olds have that first job. And when I talk to employers all over the country, the biggest thing that they are asking for, the biggest thing that they need, are soft skills, the ability to look someone in the eyes, the ability to shake a hand, to know how to show up on time, and how to dress correctly. So we have a whole generation that is not getting those skills because 70% of them are not actually working. And part of that, and again, getting a little stat heavy here, is the baby boomer generation is the wealthiest generation ever in the history of the world. It was the first consistent generation where you had 2 income earners and you had few kids. So you had 1 or 2 kids.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
And because of that, they generated incredible amounts of wealth. And you had things like automation, dishwashers, washing machines that made life easier for people. And so you had 2 income earners generating all this wealth. Well, the next generation doesn't need to work because there's all this wealth that's been built in. And that's the 3.5 million men who are sitting on their couch and they're parents' basement who are 30 years old and don't see the need to work, and their parents are just supporting them. So this is a parenting epidemic in my mind.
That's what I feel as well.
That's what so I think you're spot on. Anyway, there's some stats to back up your feeling on what's going on right now.
So let's fast forward that. So now you're not working and you don't have the soft skills as a teenager. And you now have had these employers who, as I say, I'm a very conservative on this, it just being managing so many people. I feel like they have kowtowed to the 20-year-olds who wanted beer kegs in the office. Right. But I'm dating myself. I'm also, I'm a little older. Yeah. So my mindset is a little different, but you don't always get what you want. And that's a part of life and negotiation.
Right. Yep. But absolutely.
Going back to the woke culture, I think that also fostered that in a lot of ways, where people feel, where if I said, hey, if a young man said, you look nice today on an elevator, then all of a sudden it's an assault where you feel like you've been, and as a woman, I know I'm going to get so much heat for this, but that is the beginning of men understanding how to interact with women in the workplace. And most relationships and marriages happen in the workplace.
That's right.
So what happens, I was listening to Professor G on this, and he said that he's really concerned about males between that very demographic that you just cited, especially 25 to 35-year-old males who are not getting married.
Yes.
They don't have personal relationships. He said that is one of the reasons why we're having so many mass shootings, domestic terrorism comes out of that group. And I know this is going to sound crazy. As a woman of color and as a Black woman, I do feel that we have saturated society so much with all other communities, but I feel like we've left white males out of the conversation.
Well,
and I know that is going to sound crazy, maybe coming from me to you, but right. I foresaw this happening. I was like, you can't just talk about all other demographics and not address a core demographic. And that's why President Trump won, because they felt alienated.
Right. Absolutely. And they felt like they were left out. And in fact, of those 3.5 million kind of working age men who are not working, a lot of those are white men, and they are addicted to opioids. And they're addicted, believe it or not, to video games. They are sitting in their parents' basement at 30 years old, playing video games for 8 hours a day, not feeling the need to go out and work. And, the Bible talks about if you don't work, you don't eat. But we live in a society where that is not entirely true, because their parents or the government are kind of propping them up and allowing them to coast by without doing those things. I'd also say, to your point, men need to get married. And I'm just, that may offend someone. I don't care. Men need to get married. Mm-hmm. Women are an incredibly civilizing impact on men. And they need to not just, sleep around. They need to get married, and commit and actually support a family, because when you do that, that's how men get okay, I got to go out and get to work. I got to go conquer the world because I've got a wife at home who's expecting that. So I think we've lost that as well. And so it's kind of this weird world where it feels like it's hard to get a job. And I can talk about that as well. Mm-hmm. But we do need to have people feel the consequences of not participating in society. And when I say participating in society, it's being a meaningful member who's out working, bringing value to their community, who is getting married, who is having kids. Like, we need that. And if we don't have that, the society will die at some point. And I know that.
Well, it's already starting to happen. Because we have a declining birth rate in the U.S. And that is because people are not meeting, they're not getting married, they're not socializing. And I think the bigger picture with that, which people are really missing, is when you have a declining birth rate, you don't have a labor force.
That's right. That's right.
And so how do we bridge the two? Because, again, I tend to sit on both sides politically, but you have to, I know with this new bill, the big, beautiful bill, they did remove a lot of what I call some of the dependency programs on the government to get people out and to get them to move. So I don't believe in giving people everything, but I do believe in subsidizing housing, but you got to work. subsidizing, benefits, SNAP benefits and TANFs, but you got to work. And I myself grew up on those programs, but my mother worked. I remember her working, and now, I'm successful because I saw work ethic. My brother saw work ethic. But how do we get people to see that it's all interconnected? Because now I don't think people see that.
Well, and it leads to a happy life, right? People are like,
Absolutely.
well, if I was just sitting on my couch playing video games for 8 hours a day, I'll be happy. Well, you might be entertained for the short term, but you're not going to have a happy, joyful life, because that's just not how God built us, in my opinion. We need to be out there doing great things. And we all know the dignity that is achieved when you attempt something hard and then accomplish it. We see that in sports. And this is back to your participation awards. We need to stop giving participation awards. Absolutely. Because if you try something hard and fail, then you're going to want to try that much harder to succeed next time. And that goes to every portion of life. And that actually builds dignity into individuals. But if the government is going to support someone, a female, more than her potential husband would be able to, then that's going to throw a wrench in the whole thing. So that's the moment we're in. But I remain optimistic, because I'm an eternal optimist.
Really?
I am seeing some shifts happening, and I'm going to point out a couple of them that I see happening right now. So I think universities have been part of our problem in all of this. We surveyed 80,000 employers here at Red Balloon, and we found that a lot of small employers basically don't want an employee with a bachelor's degree from a major university, because it was shocking to me. So we asked these 80,000 employers, if you see a bachelor's degree from a mainstream university on a resume, is it a positive, a negative, or a neutral? And they said 40% of them said it was a neutral, like they did not care that it was even there. But what was shocking to me was 42% said it was a negative. They actually didn't want to see that, because kids who are coming out. And so we asked some of the employers, like, why is that? They're like, well, why would I want to hire someone who's been trained to be an anarchist at a Marxist institution for 4 years, and don't understand or don't like capitalism, right? They think capitalism is evil. Well, actually, that's the job you're going to be doing. So what I'm encouraged by is you're starting to see this trend where some of that indoctrination that's been happening at universities is necessarily gearing down. Universities are feeling the demographic pinch. And so they're spending less time training students for things that have nothing to do with their career, and instead training them for their career. I actually talked to a university president recently who said, look, I don't see the students as my customer. He says they're obviously a very important factor, and we care about our students, but my customer is the employer that those students are going to be going to, right? And when that mind shift, and that has not been the mindset of universities in America over the last 20 years. It has been, the top degree granted in the U.S. year over year over the last 10 years has been a psychology degree, an undergrad in psychology. Really? And I hate to pick on everybody who's got a psychology degree. That is the most useless degree you can get, because unless you have a PhD in psychology, you're not going to be a counselor. Right. You are actually just going to go be a barista if you have a degree in psychology. Sorry. That's just the reality.
And then you're going to put more stress, because you're not going to be able to get a job.
And you got $100,000 in debt from your psychology degree, right?
That we just, the last administration wrote off, right? Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, anyway, that we got to pay for, but
but that's actually, a sticking point. So.
Yeah, but that's an encouraging trend. So we've seen like literally 100,000 plus graduates with a psychology degree in America every year. And that has been, I'll just say, poisoning the labor market. It's been putting people in this mindset where they get a participation award. It's not actually that hard. It's not actually that useful for the labor market. And as we see this shift in universities, it's going to take a minute for it to play out towards more labor-driven education, where they say, you know what, we're going to create a computer science degree that actually has the skills needed to for the employers around us. We're seeing more responsiveness to the employers in the universities. That is going to have a dramatic shift, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be a silver bullet, but you're going to start to see just this change where you're going to see a level of worker coming out. And when you have been trained as as a useful member of society, and I hate to pick on all those psychology grads out there, you're wonderful people, it's not personal, but if you've been trained to be a machinist, or you've been trained to be an engineer, if you've been trained to be an accountant or a school teacher, you are going to get the dignity that comes from work that is blessing other people. And when you do that, it changes your whole mindset. It changes the way you think about family, around society, around taxes, around government. All those things change when you have a meaningful career and when you have an education that is leading you towards a meaningful career, not just big, ugly thoughts that are going to try and destroy society. So that's one of the biggest trends that I'm seeing right now that is going to take 4 or 10 years to play out, but it's going to take us in a better direction, in my opinion.
I know in my friendship circle, they would not even get out of the home if you weren't doing some kind of STEM program. Like anything else is off the table unless you're doing biology for research or a physician. But does that not start though with the parenting and what happened to career day? Because I remember growing up, and I grew up in a public school, like we had career day where professionals came in, even at junior high school.
Yes.
And I remember a couple career days, and that kind of stirred me in a direction that I thought I would go, which is a doctor. I ended up loving marketing, but what happened to those programs?
Yeah. We've seen a shift in education, and that's why I wanted to pick on education, because I think it's so important. A shift in education away from education being a tool or a means unto an end, which is a great job that supports a family. It's turned into an end unto itself. I want you to think big thoughts. I want you to think about, why you're being oppressed, and, Marxism or communism or whatever other ism is out there that is taking you away from just doing good work and doing good things. So
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually been the shift. And if we can get a shift back to education driving towards the actual end, which is a great job that supports a family, it will change everything about education. But if your education doesn't have a purpose, doesn't have a point beyond just thinking big thoughts and trying to agree with this professor who's never actually done a real job, that is going to destroy society.
I ran into that a lot when I hired, at the time, millennials who were roughly like fresh out of college. They had no idea. They learned all these lessons, even on marketing and project management, advertising, but they could not come up with a critical thought. And I think there is something to be said. But for me, we had a gentleman a couple weeks ago on the podcast, and I told him, I said, are they not teaching critical thinking? He said, it's almost as if critical thinking in college is frowned upon. So they're not teaching the things that really, like, how do you reason? How do you look and form a strategy? But that also sits with the parenting. And I take a lot of things back to the parenting to be engaged and active. And at first I was kind of apprehensive about education when they took the federal oversight away from education. But now the more I think about it, I still kind of have mixed emotions about it. On one hand, I think it's a great idea. On the other hand, I'm like, how do we establish some type of continuity among all the states? But for me, it's math, reading. I was surprised they don't even teach handwriting anymore in elementary school, which blew me away.
That's right. And actually, my kids are at a classical Christian school, and they don't just teach handwriting; they teach cursive. They're like, it actually, there's this direct correlation between learning the motion of cursive and actually brain development. Even though you're probably never going to use cursive the rest of your life, it is part of what develops the brain in different avenues. So anyway, my point is education has been a tool that's been hurting society a lot. We've gotten away from the vocational aspect of education. We've gotten away from the practical aspect of education. And if we can return to that, and I'm starting to see some return to that, then I actually start to get very much more optimistic around where the world is going to be going, because education is a powerful tool for good or ill. And I think it's been used to hurt our children over the last 10, 20 years. And if it can start going a better direction, then a lot of these problems will actually just start to go away, in my opinion.
So I remember vocational and trade schools. I was really surprised to see that they have kind of eroded to nothingness. but you can really have a good, solid career as an HVAC person who ends up starting their own business, a plumber, electrician.
Oh, yes.
Like a master electrician in my area, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, makes at least $150,000 a year. You can have a good life and raise a good family on that salary. But they've just kind of gone away. So I definitely think there should be some technical schools, because some people just don't want to do 4 years. You can do 2 years at a community college and be pretty substantial. What can we do to start in the education system to start preparing our children? Like I have a 3-year-old, I started late, but what can you do to start really, what should I be looking at for my child as far as education to get them ready for the labor market? Like what skills do they need? They need soft skills. We know we don't want to eat a bunch of Elon Musk running around, but what kind of skills, what kind of skills do we need?
Yeah, I think they need to be out seeing people. The soft skills I'm going to start with, and that comes from dinner table conversation and then leading into the classroom, right? That is how you learn to interact with the world. Children are, if you look at a 3-year-old's daytime planner, it would just be watch mom all day. What's mom doing? I'm going to try and right. You think about it, like that's all they do.
That's so
like they're just watching. And so what are we demonstrating to them, and how are we building them up? And I'll be honest, I've got 5 kids. The oldest is now 21, and I've got 4 teenagers.
You're a 21-year-old?
I have a 21-year-old. I am 48 years old. I am.
Oh my God.
I work out a lot. I don't. But it's amazing. Like we sit around the dinner table, and I love business, right? And I also love real estate, and I'm buying buildings and selling buildings. And so I try and talk through all the deals with them. I'm like, okay, so here's an opportunity that's in front of us. Let's talk through that. Or, hey, I ran into this thing at work. What would you all do? How would you handle this situation? You can't beat that in a family setting, and obviously education needs to be part of that. But I think we need to get children thinking about how can they be a meaningful member of society. You have 2 hands and 1 mouth. You should be producing twice as much as you're consuming. And that's what I tell my kids all the time. Like you are not just consumers, and I think. And it's interesting because if you look at a lot of the economic data coming out of the Fed, coming out of DC, they talk about U.S. people as consumers. We are, what's the consumption index? They talk about consumers. No, we're producers. And so you create people who want to produce more than they consume because they have 2 hands and 1 mouth. I talk to my kids about that all the time. And so they're actually really eager to go out and work. My 15-year-old has a full-time job doing construction over the summer. And man, there is nothing better than a young man coming home completely beat. Like he is so tired. He's been doing concrete for 8 hours. And like, there's going to be far less funny business happening when a young man and he is exhausted. And man, I couldn't ask for anything better than that. So I think, and even my 13-year-old, my youngest, she's out weeding the garden. I'm like, I'm going to need, 3 hours of weeding a day. And I'm going to pay you for it because you're going to understand the economic returns for hard work. But I'm going to hold you to a higher standard, and I'm going to come check it at the end of the day and see how you did and point it out. I want to give them those skills. That's where parents need to take responsibility for that. And if you can get your kids to understand you have 2 hands and 1 mouth, you should be producing twice as much as you're consuming. It changes your mindset. And also, I keep returning to this word, it builds dignity into people when they're doing great things for other people and not just taking for themselves. And once you understand that deep down in your guts, you are going to have a happier life, and we're going to have a way better economy.
It's so funny. I told my mom, I said, as soon as my daughter gets old enough to work, I said, I'm going to have her do a housekeeping job. And she's like, what? She's like, housekeeping job? I said, yeah. I said, she was like, well, she probably wouldn't have to. I said, but I want her to, because she needs to understand how to work, how to be humble. And just because someone is doing a job that we feel is not a high net worth job, she still needs to understand how to be respectful to people. And you can only appreciate that, in my mind, once you've started or once you've worked in a job. So you know how to, and you understand gratitude and gratefulness. Yeah. And so my mother was like, oh, I never thought about it that way. She still didn't agree, but I think that that's so important, especially with daughters too. So you have sons and daughters. Do you raise them differently to prepare them for the workplace?
Yes and no. I mean, there's aspects like I will tell you, we when they turn 12, we go and get them a bank account, and we go to the bank together, and we get that sucker set up. I want them to start thinking like adults. You know, you look 100 years ago, and at 13, people were considering someone an adult. Like, okay, you should have some responsibilities. And we've kind of lost that. Where now it's like 18, maybe you're starting to get
18.
responsibilities. Yeah, maybe. And so I think that needs to be built in way earlier into the process. They need to start making decisions. You know, for the girls and the guys, early on, no, the focus is you have two hands and one mouth. So let's talk about how do we produce more. I will tell you, my 13-year-old daughter, we sat down at the beginning of the summer. I'm like, okay, what's the plan? What are you going to try and accomplish this summer? That would be great. And she's like, okay, well, actually, there's some food that I've always wanted to figure out how to make. And I'm like, fantastic. Let's do this. And I'll tell you what, my waistline is not in good shape because of my daughter's cooking right now, but I'm okay with that. That's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make.
Is she good? It must be good.
She is good. I'll tell you what, she made me a breakfast the other day. There was so much food there. I'm like, honey, I am not a teenage boy anymore. I cannot eat like 4 eggs and 9 pieces of bacon and sausage. And I'm like, honey, sweetheart, this is wonderful, and your brothers will eat it all up. So, so anyway, so is it different? Yes. I mean, you want to be preparing them for whatever vocation they're going to be in. My oldest daughter, she's just finished her first year of college. She wants to focus on business and marketing. Okay. Fantastic.
My
and
industry,
so, but connected with that, she's like, but I love taking care of people. And so I found her an internship. She's going to go down to Brazil actually next week for 2.5 weeks and teach at a YWAM school and help them build some curriculum because she's smart as a whip.
What?
And just think about like, how do we upgrade this education? How do we think about it? And, just like, how do you get kids who are pouring themselves out for other people? Because they're going to be happy when they do. That's just how the world works. I hate to say.
Yeah. And I think the great thing too about if you're a believer, they have missions that you could participate in too. And that's a great way to develop character in children as well.
Yeah. Yep.
So what are you seeing as far as other countries? Do you think we need to be worried about some of the other countries that are becoming more competitive, especially with digital nomads and now with the internet, people are hiring people. I know from El Salvador, from Africa, from Ukraine, from all over the world. Do you think that also plays a part in what you're seeing in the labor force?
I actually don't. I think that there's plenty of work to go around, and work begets work, right? Don't think of the labor market as a fixed pie. Where if someone gets a piece of that pie, then now that piece is gone and you're never going to get that piece ever again. The labor market is very much more dynamic, and the more productive, innovative people are in the labor market, the opportunities rise accordingly. And so if you're an innovative person, you think about when the settlers moved west, there was no jobs. Like there was no job board, there was no government, there was nothing, right? But there was a lot of work to do. So there's always work to do, even if there's not a job. And the jobs will come as people figure out what work needs to be done, right? And that's really, that's the genesis of the labor market. And so if you have comparative advantage where some of the lower skilled jobs are being done by people in other countries, obviously, if they do a bad job, then the company needs to reshore things, which is happening quite a bit. But there are always going to be opportunities. I don't think that is going to go away. You got to find them, and you got to be willing to work hard. But I'm not opposed to, and an economist call it comparative advantage. Basically, if they can do a thing for cheaper, then you should use their services to do that. Now, that being said, like I go against that trend. So here at Red Balloon, all of my engineers who are building my technology are here in the office. We're not doing remote. We're not doing offshoring or any of those things, because I feel like the best innovation is going to happen when you have engineers in the same room with salespeople trying to solve customers' problems, right? And so that's where I decided that's my comparative advantage, that I'm going to be able to innovate and bless customers at a totally different scale if I have that environment. That's not the right thing for every business. But it shouldn't scare job seekers. It should be businesses making the right decision, and job seekers, there's always work to be done, and you start doing work, and then lo and behold, it'll turn into a job.
So do you think there is something too when we all went remote as well for so many things like productivity? How do you think that's impacted the labor market too? Because now I know people who won't even look at a job if it's not remote. And
That's
for
right.
me, I'm ready to get back in the office to be around coworkers and colleagues. I thrive off the energy of being around other people.
Yeah, I worked at home for a year, and it nearly broke me. I love human beings. I think it's you're going to have a much healthier life if you interact with other human beings. And I think that's what COVID actually hurt society wide. Is human beings, we need other people, right? And you see this with the TV show Alone, right? You put someone on an island by themselves for 30 days and they go crazy. We need other people. That's just how we're built. There's no way around that. And so I think that there is sometimes this allure towards working at home because you have more productivity, actually, because you can just get more done. There's fewer distractions. No one's knocking on your door. No one's dropping by to say hi. But what you lose is that innovation, kind of the innovation pace that happens when you just run into somebody like, hey, what about this? Would this work? And they say, no, that's not going to work, but it does make me think about this, because every good idea in business comes from 9 bad ideas. And so you need to have that pace of innovation and of being able to throw out bad ideas that people are going to say, I don't like that idea, but there's an aspect of that I'm going to build off and turn into a good idea somewhere else. And I think we've lost that in a lot of ways. And that's why businesses increasingly are saying you need to come back to the office. Yeah. And it's not just discipline, right? Everyone's like, well, they don't trust their workers. No, that might be part of it for some people, but I don't think it's actually a trust issue. It's a pace of innovation and an ability to interact with people that is just different when you're in the office. And it's not going to work out for everybody. Sometimes I do have one remote employee because he's a total rock star. He's awesome. And I really wanted him on the team. And he still tries to be in the office for a day or two a month, right? He's an hour and a half drive away, right? Just because it's important to interact with people. So anyway, all that to be said, I think that I'm still optimistic about the labor market and where things are going. I think education is going to change quite a bit. But yeah, I do like having people in the office.
Do you think that we need everyone needs a college degree? Do you think we could just do away with not having a college degree at all?
Do you know that in the last 5 years, 264 colleges, degree granting colleges, have gone out of business in America?
Really?
And people aren't really talking about this. Wall Street Journal had an article about it. Basically, a lot of these smaller, no-name colleges and universities that have been producing these psychology degrees and graduates are just kind of going out of business because there's not enough. So there's 2 factors that are driving that. There is less demand for college degrees. So employers don't care as much, parents don't care as much, and kids don't care as much. So I don't think that there's a need for a college degree. My oldest son went to 1 year of college because he wanted to get some of the life skills associated with that. Then he went off to Africa for 3 months to actually go to college in Lusaka, Zambia. Just to get a cultural experience and get to push himself.
Did he like it?
He loved it, but he also was like, okay, now I'm ready to work. I want to get at it. I want to start earning money and start thinking about having a family at some point. So that was his mindset. Whereas I've got a couple other kids, they're going to go get at least an undergrad, if not a graduate degree, because they're really geared for school. And that's great, but not everybody needs to. I think the trades are great opportunities. My oldest son, who didn't finish college, he's a sales rep. And doing great because he actually is a hard worker. He knows how to look people in the eyes and shake a hand.
Has soft skills.
And he's got those soft skills, and he's going to work his tail off. So anyway, the point is the labor market is changing. These universities are either going to adapt or they're going to go out of business because the demand for degrees is down and the demographics are just not there. We don't have enough people graduating high school because of the birth rate in America for the last 40 years.
Really?
We don't have enough. So last year was the peak of the demographics of the most high schoolers that are going to graduate until the birth rate changes. So we just peaked, and we're now on a decline of number of high schoolers graduating for the foreseeable future, which means those are customers that are not going to go to a university, and there's less demand for a university degree. So there's a lot of mix up coming, and it's on the horizon.
But we need to focus on, in the last 5 minutes, we need to focus on soft skills for sure. We need to step up our parenting. I want to squeeze this in really quickly. education, the K through 12 education in the US is lacking. I did a blog post on this. I personally think that all teachers should start at six figures, and it should be as difficult to become a teacher as it is to get a job as an engineer at Tesla, right? That's what I personally feel. And if we did that, do you know that in 20 to 30 years, we could probably erase all of the debt in the US? If we really just went in, leaned in hard on raising the bar with teachers and making it extremely competitive to have a teaching degree.
Yeah, I actually haven't heard that, but I actually wholeheartedly agree. Teaching degrees are sometimes just I can't get anything else, so I'll just do this.
Correct.
But you are building the next generation. You're not just doing a job, right? It's one of the most important jobs. And my wife is a school teacher.
Really? She'd be happy to hear that.
Yeah, not because she needs the money, not because we need the money necessarily, but because she wants to invest in the lives of children. And when you have people like that, and of course she has multiple graduate degrees and so on and so forth. So she's an amazing teacher. But we need more people who are willing to strap in like that. But I hadn't heard that stat that you think it would erase the national debt. But and
like it'll take a minute, 20 to 30 years. It would also
just take a minute. Yep.
It would also promote equity, because if everyone had the same quality education, that in itself will undo a lot of the things that we had started a conversation about the DEI before, because all the students, whether you're in public, private, rural, it helps everyone have a quality education. That's right. $100,000, and it's possible to do.
Yeah.
That's the thing that impressed me. But you just got to have the will to do it. So
absolutely.
From our mouths to God's ears. So the last shift, what was the last shift? We talked about the shift with education. We talked about the shift, what you're seeing with college degrees, not having a lot of the employers said they don't necessarily need college degrees. Anything else that you're seeing as well?
Well, I'll just point out the last shift. If you're a job seeker and you're struggling to find a job, that's because you're actually in an AI war, whether you know it or not. Because what has happened, and AI is changing the landscape on any number of things. It's in my mind, it's just a tool. It's a very powerful tool, but it's a powerful enough tool that it's changing the way people interact with each other. And what I mean by that is what happened 5 to 10 years ago is you started to have people, what they call robo applying. So instead of going through the process and applying to a job individually, they're like, this is a lot of work. I don't want to do a lot of work. I'm going to have an algorithm or a computer program go and apply to lots and lots of jobs for me. Some people are applying to 100 jobs a day, and they're not actually doing that themselves. Well, the problem is then the companies are getting drowned in applicants that maybe aren't even a good fit, because when you have truck drivers applying to computer programming jobs, then the company throws up their hands. I talked to one business, they had a computer programmer job. They had 800 applications in the first 4 hours. Oh my God. And the vast majority of them had never programmed in their life. It was just these algorithms are out there applying to these jobs for these individuals. And so what do the companies do? Well, then they buy an applicant tracking system, an ATS, and they say, okay, I need some sort of algorithm to weed out the bad candidates who aren't going to be a good fit, right? Okay, well, that sounds like a decent idea, but the problem is hiring is a distinctly human activity. You need to look someone in the eyes and decide if they're going to do good work. And so what's happening is now the robots are fighting. And I heard from a gentleman recently, he said, I have applied to 100 jobs, and he actually did it himself. And he said, I would apply to a job at 6 p.m. at night, and by 2 a.m. I was rejected. Well, it's not that the HR department was working all-nighter. It's the algorithm decided that he didn't have the right things on his resume or whatever. And so all of a sudden, as job seekers, we're kind of left out in the cold, because if you actually do things the right way and you try and apply to a job, if you haven't gotten all the right keywords in your resume that only the ATS knows, you're going to be rejected out of hand. You're never even going to be shown to the hiring manager. And so anyway, that's the shift that's happening in the labor market. And Red Balloon's doing some really cool stuff, which you don't have time to talk about today, but we have some really cool stuff we're doing to push back against that and make hiring distinctly human again, while using AI to bring efficiency and effectiveness to humans, not to allow AI to make the decisions on who you're actually going to hire.
So can we drop that into the episode description, like how to find you on LinkedIn? I'm assuming you're on LinkedIn, and your website address. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. This has been so good. I learned a lot in this episode. And it seems like everyone has to step up their parenting game for sure.
100%. Hey, it's been a real blessing to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time, and look forward to talking again sometime.
All right. Have a good one. Bye, Andrew. Bye. Hi. So I pray you enjoyed this episode. I think this one really challenges us to think about how we're doing things when it comes to our values and education and the labor market. And I think with that being said, we need to do a better job at parenting. I'm not the parenting police, but I'm just going to put this out there. Your kid's future is determined by you. It's not determined by the government. It's not determined by anyone else. You determine your kid's future. And you got to be active. You got to be engaged. And I'm not talking about like people being bad parents, because that's not what this is about. But we have to start really focusing and making sure our kids are socialized around other people so they learn those soft skills. Going back to the basic things that us old school, some of us a little older than 40, grew up with. When you look someone in the eye, you look someone in the face, yes ma'am, no ma'am, opening the door for people, being respectful to your elders, like that stuff matters. And we could think that it doesn't matter in the society that we live in, but it's the foundation for goodness, right? It's the foundation for community. And what I think has happened in this to bring us to the point where we are today, I really personally feel that we missed that because nobody gives a crap about anybody else, right? And you're not thinking about you being your brother's or your sister's keeper. And we need to get back to that place. We need to be able to just say like, hey, I just thought about you. What's going on? How are you? And people may say like, well, what does that have to do with the labor market and the economy? That's everything. Because when people feel supported, when they feel encouraged, when they feel seen, they want to participate in life and community and culture. And then they want to be engaged in the workplace, and you create better ideas. You have more innovation when people are working together, thriving together, problem solving together. All this isolation is not good for humankind. And that means it's not good for the labor market, and it's definitely not good for the economy. So that's just my thoughts. I definitely like to hear what you got to say. If you agree, say yes, say no, say Towan, but you missed this. I want to hear it, because this is about you. It's not necessarily about me. And I want to hear your thoughts on what's some of the things that you did when you were coming up that your parents taught you or your grandparents used to say. And let's just come up with a roster, a role. Like these are the 10 commandments of what every parent should be teaching their kid. We already got two. We already have two. 1, please and thank you. Right? 2, looking people in the eye. Let's just start there. Those are the basics. But I'd like to hear from you. Please subscribe. Thank you guys so much. I love you so much. If no one ever tells you I love you, I said I love you and I mean it. So Godspeed and God blessings.